It's officially the new year. We'll tell you which players will keep up their New Year's resolutions on this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. Kate, it is the new year. We all have our resolutions. Mine are to read 20 books this year. We'll see if I can get it done. But on today's show, we're going to talk about some NFL players who we want to see transform and get better in 2025. But before we do that, let's talk about a couple players that did keep up with your New Year's resolutions in 2024. Which players do you think changed the most last season?
I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about, quarterbacks like, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, who I think both had tremendous transformations, but we've talked about them a lot lately. So I want to, skim over some of these guys and talk about some others. Because again, Sam Darnold probably had the biggest transformation of all, I would say. But yeah, this isn't just about, this isn't a Sam Darnold show. And nor do we want it to be. I want to talk first about Jackson Smith-Njigba, a second-year wide receiver who, let's just say didn't come out of the draft as hot as expected. But when we kind of look at our own, level of expectations, we probably should have tempered them a bit. We knew that, DK Metcalf was still the wide receiver one in that offense. We knew that Tyler Lockett was still an integral part of that game plan. It took JSN some time, but I think he absolutely came into his own this year and made all of the plays that he was expected to make originally. It just took him a minute.
It also helped that they got an actual real offensive coordinator this year. I think that certainly helped. But yeah, you're right. Like he went from somebody last year that we thought was kind of a slot only player, somebody that was only going to make plays at or near the line of scrimmage. And then this year we're seeing him being used all over the offense. I know you and I talked about earlier in the season, we were hoping to see Seattle shift their offense to be more JSN dependent and let DK Metcalf be the big play guy. And that's what happened. JSN ended up becoming the target leader on this offense, and they were better for it. So he is absolutely somebody who improved in 2024. I want to go to the running back position. James Cook. James Cook is somebody who has always been really talented. He's always been in a good offense. Like that hasn't changed. But one of the things that maybe scared us a little bit about James Cook was he just didn't put up big touchdown totals, and that always limited his upside. But we saw this year, he's got no problem getting into the end zone. I believe he leads the NFL in touchdowns from scrimmage, has been absolutely fantastic. And now we're talking about him pretty consistently as a top 10 dynasty running back. I'm not sure any of us could have anticipated that this year.
Yeah, and the thing is, he was always kind of a fringe, top 12, top 15 guy, but there was that concern that the touchdowns would be such a problem that he's not going to be able to overcome it. But I mean, here's the thing. I also don't feel like he's gotten enough credit for the fact that he's leading the league in scrimmage touchdowns. Like, nobody's really talking about James Cook. He's not a player that has a ton of buzz, and I think it's because all of those fears about the touchdowns, etc., are still kind of in the back of your head. But I mean, you look at his advanced metrics, he's performed really well this year. And he's been that explosive playmaker that you knew he could, but he's also shown a little bit more in between the tackles. He's shown that nose for the end zone. Now, how much should we change his overall dynasty value because of the touchdowns? Because I will admit, touchdowns I want to know that you can score touchdowns, but touchdown production in and of itself is not something that I think should catapult James Cook into a top 5 conversation.
No, but I think he's locked himself into a top 10 running back. And I think if he's your low end RB1, you're absolutely thrilled with it. I want to actually mention another running back, Kate, Devon Achane, who last year we knew he wasn't going to be able to sustain the 7.8 yards per attempt. His yards per attempt this year have actually gone way, way lower. He's at 4.1, which actually is a little bit below league average. But he has 78 catches. He's really improved as a receiver. And that's why I'm putting him in this transformer category, because he's transformed his game from a home run hitting running back to somebody that has become a weapon in the passing game. And even if he's not being efficient on the ground, he's helping your fantasy game through the air. I think Devon Achane is one of the biggest winners in 2024.
Yeah. How about another guy, Jerry Jeudy, found himself in a new offense this year with the Cleveland Browns. And let's be real, this was not a good offense, but posted the second highest passer rating when targeted in his NFL career best in terms of fantasy points, in terms of receiving yards. And he still did it with just 4 touchdowns. Like, he truly took over this role as the wide receiver 1 for the Cleveland Browns. And I think they were better for it. Also showed some diversity in terms of his usage. 64% of his snaps played out wide. Over the past 3 years, he has primarily played out of the slot. So they shifted his role a little bit, and we didn't see this tremendous drop off in production. We saw some improvements. I think generally speaking, Jerry Jeudy, a guy who's finally kind of maybe growing into his role a little bit. The only question is obviously what's up at quarterback.
I'm to the point, though, it doesn't even really bother me, because I watched him last week with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who's maybe the most inaccurate quarterback in the league outside of Anthony Richardson, still put up numbers. I mean, like, Jerry Jeudy is, I don't want to say he's quarterback proof, but he played with Watson, Jameis Winston, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson, 3 quarterbacks who probably won't be starting next year, Kate, and he still had a breakout season. So maybe the Browns go out and they get a veteran this offseason that can actually be competent and reliable, and we see the Jeudy ceiling get even higher. But I think we know that he can produce even with bad quarterbacks right now. Yeah, I'm in. What I also want to mention, just in this Browns offense, I thought David Njoku did a better job this year of being just an overall more reliable tight end. He had the same quarterback situation and problems that Jeudy had. I thought Njoku had a better job. Anybody else that you wanted to mention before we move over to guys that could do it in 2025?
I think that about covers it. We wanted to stay positive here. Now, to be fair, we could do a whole show about some negative transformations, but that's not how we want to start off the new year. So we're going to keep it rolling. We're going to stay positive, but there are a lot of players, I think, both, some more common household names and maybe those further down the depth chart that I think are going to do it here in 2025.
This episode is brought to you by Gametime. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, comedy, or theater. One of my favorite events was I actually went and saw a comedy show with my wife for our anniversary. It was absolutely fantastic. The energy and the excitement was unforgettable. Now with Gametime, they have made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. One of my favorite things about the Gametime app is they have so many great features, one including the all-in pricing. You can toggle this feature. It'll show your pricing up front, so there's no surprise fees at checkout. Or you can see the panoramic view of the seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you show up to your live event. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We are breaking down some older veterans that are going to transform in 2025 and become real fantasy assets. Kate, why don't you go first? Who do you got?
This guy isn't like, salt and pepper kind of veteran, but he's a guy that now has a couple of years under his belt in the NFL and has dealt with some health problems that I think have been the biggest barrier to his path to fantasy relevance. I want to talk about Indianapolis Colts wide receiver Josh Downs, former second round pick, who again dealt with third round pick, dealt with health issues that I think have been the biggest problem when it comes to his production. Now, the quarterback play, he's seen a lot of ups and downs, but I do think out of all the types of wide receivers, a guy that can play a lot out of the slot, he can, win against man. Like, there's a lot to like about his ability to generate separation that might make him a little bit more impervious to the play of his quarterback and getting him some of those high layup throws. Now, despite the fact that he was dealing with like plenty of injuries, 88th percentile in open target rate per PFF, 85.6% of his targets were considered open. That ranked 13th out of 109 qualifying wide receivers, ranked 19th of 129 qualifying wide receivers in terms of yards per route run. 77th percentile in yards after the catch per reception per PFF. He did a lot of really good things despite a ton of roadblocks this year. And I do think that, again, just from like a prototype standpoint of like his role within the offense, I think that's kind of the safest one. He gets some more of these higher percentage throws over the middle, or what should be higher percentage throws if you can make them. Dig at Anthony Richardson there, but I love what I saw out of Josh Downs this year.
I was going to name Michael Pittman because I think Pittman with a competent quarterback can still be a top 20, top 25 receiver. I just don't know if the Colts will ever find that quarterback that's competent. We'll see. Maybe Chris Ballard, if he's still there, gets aggressive at trying to find a better quarterback. But I think that's a great call. I don't know if you can call this player an older veteran because I believe right now he is 25 years old. But I'm buying Trevor Lawrence this offseason. I know it's been up and down. Kate, he is down to QB 19 in Dynasty startup drafts. Some quarterbacks that have passed him: Bo Nix, Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, Tua, Baker Mayfield. I just think with the emergence of Brian Thomas, who was great with Trevor Lawrence, but has been even better over the last couple of weeks. He gives him a bona fide, legit number one receiver. Evan Ingram should be back. He's been banged up most of the year. We'll see about Christian Kirk, whether he is back in 2025. But I just think that Jacksonville is going to go out and get a much younger, more dynamic head coach, maybe a coach that like has an iPhone 15, a coach that wears skinny jeans where you can see their ankles. Like that's what I want for Trevor Lawrence, like a new age.
Balances or
yeah, exactly. I want somebody that like, knows when Call of Duty double XP weekend is. Like that's what I want for Trevor Lawrence.
So you want Kyler Murray?
Well, I mean, I want a millennial head coach for Trevor Lawrence, and I think he's going to get it. To be honest, I think he's going to get somebody who is dynamic that can bring out his best skill set. I just think at QB 19, I'm willing to buy.
I think that's a fair assertion, and maybe this is like kind of me just being a little tired because I have been a proponent of Trevor Lawrence, and I have thought, generally speaking, watching his play has been a lot better than like it kind of feels from a fantasy perspective. He's big, he's long, he's mobile, like, but it's always something. And I think that that's kind of been a point of exhaustion for fantasy managers. It's always something. It's a bad offense. It's a bad head coach. It's, the health. It's always something. So that does get a bit exhausting. But I think when you look at his overall production, posted a career high 7.2 yards per attempt this year. Wasn't super productive in the touchdown department, but let's not forget year 2 through 30 touchdowns. And I do think, again, like generally speaking, from a weapons perspective, not only has he not been healthy, he lost a lot of his receivers, especially down the stretch. You had Christian Kirk with a season-ending injury. You had Gabe Davis, season-ending injury. Evan Ingram. Like, it was this never-ending chain. But again, when you watch Trevor Lawrence play, it feels so much better than when you look
I
at the
know.
box score.
And
And
that's why I'm buying, right? That's exactly why I'm buying. And if you can find a coach that just makes him 10% better, which honestly I don't think is going to be hard to do, I think he's going to be fine. I'm going to actually set you up for the next one. I want you to tell me if you think this player will transform his game in 2025. And that's Najee Harris. Now, he's a free agent this offseason, and that's partly why I'm asking, as our resident Steeler insider, do you think Najee Harris could be somebody that we just see hit the best version of himself next year?
yes, now Najee Harris is a guy that I think has grown kind of tremendously over his 4-year career with the Steelers. Now, it again hasn't really translated to the box score, but he's one of these players that I think the growth that you've seen from him kind of transcends the box score in a big way. And when you watch Najee Harris, it's a lot different than when you check the final stats at the end of the game. A lot of breakaway runs, a lot of tough yards after contact. He's shown tremendous improvement, I think, in the vision department. Still a bit kind of puzzled as to why the Steelers didn't pick up his 5th-year option, especially after this like free agency period. You look at the contracts and suddenly, I think his 5th year would have been $6 million. It seems like a steal. I do think he's going to have the luxury of picking his new home. And I do think that, again, just the overall skill set, year 1 and year 2, I was thinking, okay, this doesn't look like the guy from Alabama.
No.
Last 2 years, I think he's looked like the guy from Alabama. And I imagine what he could do behind an offense with more consistency, with more rhythm, and with a better offensive line.
You just reminded me of somebody else that we should have mentioned in Transformers. Chuba Hubbard was somebody who went from a
Oh, heck
kind
yeah.
of a journeyman running back to an every week starter. Would have been a fantasy winner if he didn't get hurt. What week 16, something like that. But I'm interested to see what happens with Najee Harris because he is one of the best free agent running backs out there. Now, this is a really good running back draft coming up, so maybe that'll decrease his market a little bit. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see a younger team that wants a veteran on their offense go out and get Najee Harris. Anybody else you want to mention here before we move on to some younger players that we could see break out in 2025?
No, I think that about covers it. But man, do we have some interesting names on, I think, pretty much every end of the spectrum here that you're not going to expect here in terms of young assets that might be huge values in your league.
This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many awesome ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on the futures market, which you can still do. Even though we're going into week 18, there's still division bets out there. You can bet on awards like Coach of the Year, MVP, Offensive Rookie of the Year, all available right now on FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That is FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day, one in the morning with Tyler Rowland, one in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins, available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Kate, let's talk about some 2025 sleepers, like first, second, third-year players that we could see transforming and becoming dynasty assets this year. Who do you got?
I'm going to start bottom of the barrel here, and I'm going to reach for the skies here. I want to talk about Kayshon Boutte, Patriots wide receiver in his second season, who I think has shown some leaps and bounds here. And let's be real, I'm not saying the expectations for Kayshon Boutte are sky high, but I do want to remember that coming out of LSU, which we have established is apparently wide receiver university, Kayshon Boutte was an absolute freak. He was a freak of nature as a true freshman. Just he played ball different. And I think seeing him over the past year, 6th round pick, fell because of maturity issues and some kind of off the field stuff. And it seems like he's kind of settled into a role within this organization that's proven to be a relatively steady one. He's been a consistent, theme in the passing game. I think they found their answer at quarterback, like despite some of the asinine rumors we're hearing, like, oh, maybe the Patriots,
No,
drafted.
chance.
No, they found their quarterback. And, all things considered, Kayshon Boutte ranked second in terms of wide receiver targets, ranked second in receiving yards. And I do think showed overall the greatest leap in terms of year 1 to year 2. And for a player that I think had a ton of traits that you really like at the wide receiver position, who maybe needed some more of the mental aspects, I think seeing that kind of improvement is really huge for me. He's still only 22 years old.
I think the best reason that you had is Drake May. I believe in Drake May. Now, do I believe in the coaching staff? No. Do I believe in the organization? Honestly, no. And that's crazy for an organization that has won this many Super Bowls. But I think Drake May is so transcendent that he's going to be good enough to elevate some of these receivers. And I think if I had to pick one in New England right now, I probably would pick Kayshon Boutte. So I think that's a really good call. My guy isn't really a sleeper. It's Xavier Worthy, who was a first-round pick, who's had 9 touchdowns this year. But you're seeing the confidence and the trust in Patrick Mahomes, or in Worthy from Patrick Mahomes. And we saw this play out last year with Rashee Rice. The second half of the year, Rashee Rice was outstanding. And then by the time we got to the start of the 2024 season, Rashee Rice was outstanding. Now, obviously, he got hurt. Otherwise, I think he would have had a chance to lead the NFL in receptions. I'm not predicting that Worthy is going to do that, but Worthy is a 21-year-old receiver who is already very involved in this offense, and you can see that they're trying to find ways to get him the football. In an alternate world where Patrick Mahomes is a little bit more accurate, he's a 1,000-yard, 12-touchdown receiver this year, which is crazy to say Mahomes be a little bit better of a quarterback because he's the best quarterback in the league. But Worthy's been open all the time, and I have to imagine as he gets older, as he puts on a little bit more man weight, I think he's going to be okay.
How about Marvin Mims, who, again, a guy that we talk a lot about, but I want to give him his flowers here through the fantasy playoffs, because dating back weeks 12 through 17, Marcus, Marvin Mims leads all wide receivers with at least 10 targets in terms of yards after the catch per reception, 4.39 yards per route run in that span, 137.5 NFL passer rating when targeted. He's played all over the field. He hasn't just played out of the slot. He's played a nice mix of like slot. He's played out wide. He's gotten deep targets. I think the diversification of his role and seeing just how productive and efficient he's been with those opportunities in the second half of the season, I think we're starting to see an increased level of trust from his coaching staff. I think they're making a concerted effort to get him more involved in the game plan. And on a Sean Payton offense with an ascending quarterback, I like what we've seen from Marvin Mims. And it's not like it's out of nowhere, because we already knew he was a very talented prospect who had a lot of very desirable physical traits that could make him a superstar.
My last one here, this one's a stretch, and you're going to have to squint a little bit, but it's Trey Tucker of the Las Vegas Raiders. So
I'm squinting.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing. So Tucker started the year playing behind Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer. I mean, there's just a lot of pass catchers on this offense. Brock Bowers obviously went on to set the all-time tight end record for most receptions as a rookie. Jacoby Myers has been really good. And the quarterback play has been awful. Gardner Minshew, Aiden O'Connell, Desmond Ridder started a game. And yet he's had a pretty good second season. He's had 515 yards, 3 touchdowns. He hasn't played a ton of snaps, but when he's on the field, he makes plays. I wouldn't be surprised he finishes this year with 600 or so receiving yards. If the Raiders can just get a competent quarterback, and when I mean competent, I mean like a top 25 quarterback in the NFL, I think Trey Tucker is one of these guys that has like rare speed that can make plays down the field. And I wouldn't be surprised if they go into the 2025 offseason with the same cast of receivers of Jacoby Myers, Trey Tucker, and Brock Bowers is the de facto number one. Trey Tucker is somebody that I just want at the bottom end of my dynasty rosters because I think he's #good.
I mean, I actually don't think the weapons here for the Raiders are all that bad. I look at it and yeah, you might not, nothing screams wide receiver one, but Brock Bowers is effectively wide receiver one.
He is.
Michael Mayer is a tight end that we really liked coming out of Notre Dame, who I think has a really solid skill set when he's been available to the team. I think in terms of, receiving weapons, I think this is actually probably an underrated unit in the NFL. So it really just comes down to that quarterback position and whether or not they can find the answers there. I don't know if they will. And that's my biggest point of hesitancy. But I think sometimes that is where we find the greatest values in, some of these teams that we have those doubts in.
Let me ask you this. So Tom Brady is a minority owner there. And I don't know how much say Tom Brady has, but
it seems like they want to get him involved in this.
I think you're right. Yes, I think that's the point. I just don't see how Tom Brady is going to let this organization go into 2025 with Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew as their quarterback. Mm-hmm. And they're not going to be drafting inside the top 5, which likely means they're out of the running for like Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. So could they be a team that goes out and signs Sam Darnold? Could they go out and trade for JJ McCarthy? Or could they be a stealth team for maybe one of these rosters looking to move on? Like
Kirk Cousins?
Well, that's one. We talked about last week, Geno Smith, how Geno could potentially be a guy that gets a change of scenery. I don't think Geno is a franchise-altering quarterback, but can you imagine how much better everybody in the offense would be if Geno was your quarterback in Las Vegas?
Significantly better.
Exactly. And I think that's what they're going to be looking for. Like, give them a competent quarterback that can help develop the rest of the weapons on this offense.
And I think that's exactly what they get out of a player like Geno. So I don't know, guys. You heard it here first. We found the perfect trade partner for the Seattle Seahawks.
Aaron Rodgers?
No.
Okay. Maybe I'd rather just have Tom Brady, honestly.
Same. Yeah.
All right. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. We are free and available on all platforms. You can follow Kate on Twitter @KateMajuk. I'm at Marcus _Mosier, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.